Hey everybody, welcome back to Grace's Journey and God's Faithfulness. Today we are going to talk about when they were trying to get Gracie well enough to be transferred to General Pediatrics, and from there they wanted to send her home. So here we go. So back in the NICU, they were getting Gracie ready for her to be transferred to General Pediatrics. And from there, they told me that Gracie would go home. And when she was ready for surgery, she would come back. But honestly, it just wasn't right, because the way Gracie was nowhere near ready to go home and for her to come back again for the surgery. So what I said to them is, no, I am not taking Gracie home like that. I am not comfortable taking Gracie home like that. Gracie is going to stay here until she gets her surgery done. So they insisted that she was ready for her to be transferred to General Pediatrics, and I told them Gracie is not ready to be transferred to General Pediatrics. Gracie was not ready. But again, they did not listen to me. They transferred her to General Pediatrics, where her care wasn't so intense. And there she was. One Saturday afternoon, some friends came to visit her. And when they reached, I could see on their faces that they did not believe that Gracie was going to make it. The look on their faces, I could tell that they thought that she was going to die. But we stayed there, we talked, and we sang a few songs, they prayed, and then they went home. And during the week, early in the morning, I went back to the hospital. And when I got to the hospital, I went to the room that she was in. I went to where her bed was supposed to be, and I did not see Grace. When I didn't see Grace, my heart did not drop. I was not scared. I turned around and I saw a nurse and I said, "Where is Grace? Where did you guys take her to?" And then I saw her panicking. I saw other nurses panicking. I still wasn't panicked. I just stood there watching them. And then they ran and called the doctor. And then the doctor came running and said, "Didn't I tell you guys to let me know when she's coming before she got into the room?" So I looked at her and said, "What's going on? Where is Grace?" And she said, "Well, last night Gracie needed more support. They called the code and they had to transfer Gracie to ICU. And she is down there right now. So she's going to go down there with us." And we went down. This doctor was such a nice doctor. Lord bless this lady. She was such a nice doctor. She talked to her so nice, and she was so helpful. And when we went to PICU this time, they did not transfer her to the NICU, but they transferred her to the PICU, Pediatric Intensive Care Unit. And we went there. When we went there, they told us that we couldn't go in yet. And we stood outside, waited for them, whatever they were doing. And then the doctor said, "Let her go inside to see what was going on, and then she would fill us in." She went in. She tried to find out as much as she could. She came back. She told us they're trying to get her ready, and she will be ready soon. And we stayed there, but she had to go back. So she went back and we stayed there. When we went in, we saw Gracie. Gracie was intubated. Help her. She was on a machine that would help her to breathe. So the night before, she was having difficulty breathing, and they had to take her to the ICU. Thank God Gracie was still in the hospital, and Gracie had not gone home yet. And then we found out that Gracie, it was a struggle to intubate Grace. They told me Gracie has the most difficult airway to intubate. The doctors tried to intubate Grace several times, but could not intubate Grace. I tell you, gosh, I cannot not say this. We serve a mighty, mighty good God. After several tries, they could not intubate Grace. Finally, this doctor, the best of the best, who was not scheduled to be there, just walked in. She just so happened to walk in with another patient, and there these doctors were trying, and it's not like those doctors were not good. Those doctors were good. This is their work, this is their job. These doctors are the best of the best. It just so happened that this lady was more experienced than them, and she walked in with the patient, and she And she went in to try to intubate Grace. The first time she tried, it didn't happen. It didn't work. She tried a second time. And upon the second try, she got to intubate Grace. Praise God. Praise God. Praise God. Although men had not scheduled that doctor to be there, but God had already scheduled her to be there in that room at that time, on that day. And she walked in and she intubated Grace on the second try. When we went in, I saw Gracie. Gracie was intubated. Gracie had to be restrained so that she wouldn't pull the tube out. And there she was. And God is so good. We saw Gracie there. I prayed. And I started texting everybody on my contact list. And I just want to say this. Toronto Central family, church family. I just want to say thank you to all of you. Pastors, elders, members, every one of you. Thank you guys so much for the support. You guys constantly prayed for Grace. And we are grateful. Thank you all very, very, very much. So when that happened, I called Pastor North and I told him what was happening. He told me he would come. He came in and he prayed. Sister North came in to see her. I had some solid support from these people. And I want to say to you out there, you may not have a child with trisomy 18 or trisomy 21. But no matter what you're going through or your child is going through, God is able. God is never not on time. God is always on time. I remember when Gracie was in General Pediatrics. When Gracie was breathing, I could see Gracie's head bopping like this when she was breathing. I saw Gracie crying, but I could not hear Gracie's voice. She was crying, but I couldn't hear her voice. I could tell something was not right. When I left the night, when we left, we prayed and we left Gracie in the hands of God. The next day when we returned to the hospital, walking into the room, went to her where her bed was supposed to be. Her bed wasn't there. Gracie was not in the room. I did not panic. But with all of that, still not a call from the hospital saying, well, your child has had an episode and we've transferred her to the PICU. And I mean, a heads up, let me know what is going on. But nothing like that. I had to walk into the room and find her where her bed was supposed to be empty. And she was nowhere around. But thank God for the strength that He gave me. Thank God for faith. You know, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Whatever you're going through out there, you are not going through it alone. God is right there with you. Just invite Him in. Lazarus was dead for 4 days. This is one of the things that kept me going. He was already dead for 4 days. Nothing was working in him. No organ was working. No heartbeat. No breathing. No nothing. When Christ came, He called Lazarus. Lazarus, come forth. If God could raise a dead man who's been dead for 4 days, you mean to tell me God could not do anything for my daughter? I believe that if He could have done that for a dead man, He could have done it for my daughter. And I believe that. And I waited for that. I prayed for it. Nothing is impossible with God. So no matter what you are going through, it is not beyond the power of God. God is able. And yes, He can. Cry out to Him. Depend on Him. Call upon His name. But God gave me the strength. When I walked in to see Grace in the PICU, intubated, we've strained this little child, your heart would have sunk. But I was not afraid. I'm not saying that to say, well, I had so much strength in and of my own self. No, because I knew the God that I believed in. I knew that He was able to help. And I prayed for strength and He gave me the strength. And I just want to thank God for His love, His grace, and His mercies that He kept Gracie. Seeing Gracie lying down You know, I did not see how this child could survive on her own. I just didn't see that. But I saw hope. Hope in God. That God could turn this around. God could make it better. And He did make it better. Apnea after apnea. Then doctors started doing tests on her. And the results were not coming with hope. I remember they did a head ultrasound to check her brain wave. After that, they called a meeting. And when I went to the meeting, they told me, normal people, their brain wave goes like this. It goes like this. But Gracie's brain wave was like this. Just 2 waves they showed me. And they told me her brain is abnormal. Gracie would not be able to breathe on her own. Gracie would not make it. That's one thing they kept on ringing in my mind, that my child would not make it. Again, they told me to give her comfort care, and I said no thank you. Full code for her. I remember one day I was in the hospital and one of the staff doctors called me again. It was not easy, y'all. It was not easy. Every time they used to call me, this child is not going to make it. They bombarded me with this. All the time. And most of the time I used to be there by myself. She took me to a room and she put me to sit in the corner. And she took her chair and she sat right in front of me. There was a desk, put me in a corner by the desk, took her chair, put it in front of me, and she sat right in front of me. If I wanted to escape, I couldn't. There was no space to escape. And she told me, your daughter is not going to make it. The brain wave is not good. The brain stem is not strong enough. She's not going to make it. And I looked at her and I said, I know there is a God. And by His grace, Gracie will make it. She looked at me and she said to me, God gives us the knowledge to do what we are doing. And if I tell you your daughter is not going to make it. And she stopped there. When I heard that, I looked at her. And again in my mind, I'm thinking, you foolish woman. Because you think she cannot make it. You think that the God that I serve, the God of heaven, is not able to make her make it? The God of heaven is not able to turn this around? I looked at her and I smiled. I said to her, do everything you can do to keep her alive. We serve such an amazing God. He said that His words will not come back to Him void. And you know what? It will not. And I totally believe that. I have experienced it. It will not go back to Him void. Grace is a living testimony of that. Well, no matter what you're going through, remember that God is able and all things are possible through Christ. When I said that to the doctor, she looked at me. She wasn't happy. But then she got up, got out of my way, and allowed me to pass. I got up, I went out, and I went back to my daughter's side. I stayed by her. I prayed over her. I sang songs to my daughter. And I thank God. I do not want this video to be too long. So until next time, take care of yourselves. And remember, all things are possible through Christ. He's able to make the impossible be possible. Grace's journey in God's faithfulness continues.